Hey crew, it's Ben, and I'm back with another Bible study. Today we are going to be back in the book of Daniel. We will be wrapping up the book of Daniel, and if you are unfamiliar with anything that we have been doing in the book of Daniel, I highly recommend that you start at the beginning because I am doing an unconventional Bible study because I hold some unconventional beliefs. I would hate for you to get lost, and it is much easier if you follow from the beginning. It is a long path, but it leads us to here, and that is worth it. We will be wrapping up the study of the New Testament today, and we will be wrapping up the Old Testament today and beginning the New Testament starting in the next segment. So this will be interesting. We're going to go ahead and dive in for those who have been tagging along. This is Daniel 10 because we left off in Daniel 9. There is a lot in here, so let's dive into the text. In the third year of In the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a message was revealed to Daniel, who was called Belteshazzar. The message was true, and it concerned a great conflict, and the understanding of the message was given to him in a vision. In those days I, Daniel, was mourning for 3 full weeks. I ate no rich food. No meat or wine entered my mouth, and I did not anoint myself with oil until the 3 weeks were completed. On the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the great river, the Tigris, I lifted up my eyes, and behold, there was a certain man dressed in linen, with a belt of fine gold of Uphaz around his waist. His body was like beryl, his face like the brilliance of lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of polished bronze, and his voice like the sound of a multitude. Okay, so let's stop and look at the description right here, right? So, fine linen is the grounding, right? We have the temple clothing is made of linen for a reason. If you don't know what my belief on that is, you should definitely go back and check through the rest of the playlist. But grounding yourself is highly important to the temples. And so they're dressed in the linen. The body is beryl. Bear in mind, we did this before, but beryl is a translucent gemstone, but it can be many different colors. It can vary from a red to a blue. There are some green variations. It depends. This face, however, is not like we have seen it before. Like his face is like the brilliance of lightning. No, normally, every time we've seen it before, it has been described as a fire, flaming, the color of amber, orangish yellow, but never like lightning. Lightning is a bright, brilliant white. So this is possibly a completely different entity than we have seen at any point before. Uh, his eyes like flaming torches. Now that does bear into the amber, but not really. His arms and legs like the gleam of polished bronze. Now, polished bronze is orange, but that's different than the brilliance of the face. And his voice like the sound of a multitude. I'm just repeating this so that you can get that into your mind and look and see what you see from it. I can't visualize that, so it's not up to me to see what it looks like. Only I, Daniel, saw the vision. The men with me did not see it, but a great terror fell upon them, and they ran and hid themselves. So I was left alone, gazing at this great vision. No strength remained in me. My face grew deathly pale, and I was powerless. I heard the sound of his words, and as I listened, I fell into a deep sleep with my face to the ground. Suddenly, a hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. He said to me, Daniel, you are a man who is highly precious. Consider carefully the words that I am about to say to you. Stand up, for I have now been sent to you. And when he said this to me, I stood up, trembling. Do not be afraid, Daniel, he said, for from the first day that you proposed to understand and humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. However, the prince of the kingdom in Persia opposed me for 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I had been left there with the kings of Persia. Now, I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the latter days, for the vision concerns those days. And while he was speaking these words, I set my face towards the ground and became speechless. And suddenly, one with the likeness of a man touched my lips, and I opened my mouth and said to the one standing before me, My Lord, because of the vision, I am overcome with anguish, and I have no strength. How can I, your servant, speak with you, my Lord? Now I have no strength, nor is any breath left in me. Again, the one with the likeness of a man touched me and strengthened me. Do not be afraid, you who are highly precious, he said. Peace be with you. Be strong now, be very strong. And as he spoke with me, I was strengthened and said, Speak, my Lord, for you have strengthened me. Do you know why I have come to you? I must return at once to fight against the prince of Persia, and when I have gone forth, behold, the prince of Greece will come. But first I will tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth. Yet no one has the courage to support me against these, except Michael, your prince. There is a lot right here. If you have been following along, you know that I think that most of the interaction in this book has been entities, right? I don't believe that at any point, really, it hasn't been God since, we got the commandment from Noah, right? Like since Adam walked with God, maybe, right? I don't believe that God can be incarnate, right? I think the walking with God was before we were what we are now, right? I don't really believe that there was ever a physical presence of God. God is too big for that. He doesn't incarnate in the flesh. That's why we exist. And so, because of that, I look at these entities a little bit differently than other people do. I've been quite clear about that all the way through this, right? We've had one entity calling for blood. A sacrifice of blood has been required for one entity, and it has been atrocious, and there's been a lot of it. And then there is another entity who has not been calling for that blood, who has been stopping the bloodshed wherever it was possible, right? We have seen the direct opposition of these two entities, and the choice to follow the one entity. The bloody entity blesses greatly. I don't know if at that point it is Michael, but that is his prince. Not the prince of Babylon, not the prince of Persia, right? This guy is the prince of Babylon, and he has been imprisoned by the prince of Persia. This is an entity. This is not a human being. We're not talking about the kings. The kings died. We're talking about the entity in charge of the region. You don't have to believe that there are entities in charge of the region, but we are told that we fight not against the forces of the earth, but against princes and principalities. These are the princes and principalities, given names and limitations. The prince of Babylon is held in captivity through the machinations of the prince of Persia, but held by the kings of Persia, and is only released through the intervention of another entity named Michael, is he allowed to come there, because Michael is Daniel's entity, and Daniel's entity for some reason doesn't show up, but sends this guy. I don't know that we have his name, right? We have Michael's name. There are indeed powers at play. I serve no entity. I serve the God of creation, he who is, was, and always shall be. And if you see in the physical incarnation anyone claiming to be God, they are wrong. We are not God. We are very tiny specks of God, right? We're like the atoms in the fingernail of God. We are part of God. We have access to God. We can do things in the name of God. I fully believe these things. I believe that these entities can help you. Some of them are aligned good. It's just really hard for us to determine which one, so I don't swear allegiance to any of them. I keep my allegiance to God and Him Himself with no mediator in between. None. This is an affirmation for me for the things that I am doing here. The entities are limited because they are not God's either. I don't know what they are. Some of them may be very well in touch with God the Creator in a way that I do not understand or comprehend. I am fully okay with that. They may be direct representatives of God and hear His literal voice and obey literally. I'm okay with that. But some of them don't. And so I take God at God, right? I look at the fruits. I see the demeanor. If the entity is appearing and you're fearful and frightful, it's probably the one that's going to require the blood. But somehow, some way, the ones that come saying, be calm, it's okay. And the ones that you have an overwhelming sense of peace for, they don't require that blood. It's amazing. It's a wonderful thing. And we see it repeatedly in this book. This is an affirmation for me. Because here, at the end of Daniel, when you were told specifically to pay attention to these words, right? What are the words? Do not be afraid. From the first day you purpose to understand and humble yourself, right? So how long was that? He tells us, I don't want to get it wrong, but 3 full weeks. Now for us, that's 21 days, right? For them it should be 2. So maybe he started a little bit late, but on the 24th day of the first month. Now, I'm not going to pull up the calendar, but that's not January. It's more around where we are now. I lifted up my eyes, and there was the man. Okay, so for 21 days, he was held captive. He said from the first day, let's get back to it. From the first day that you purpose to understand and humble yourself before God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. However, the prince of the kingdom of Persia opposed me for 21 days. When I talk about the places of power that are forced, like these entities seem to congregate on, and then Michael, one of the chief princes, so that is a more powerful entity, and just so happens to be the one that is related to Daniel, who just so happens to be Israeli in this account. And so he falls to the ground, but he tells him, says, I have come to explain what will happen to your people in the latter days. But these are the words that he's telling you. Do not be afraid. You are highly precious. Peace be with you. Be strong. Be very strong. And you have strengthened me, so what is your message? Do you know why I have come to you? I must return at once to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I have gone forth, behold, the prince of Greece will come. That is yet another entity. But first, I will tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth. He's telling him, don't be afraid. Like, that's the first words, right? He tells him, I have come to you. Listen what I'm about to tell you. Stand up, for I have been sent. That's the first words. And then it is, Daniel, do not be afraid. From the first day that you humbled yourself, I was supposed to be here, but I was held prisoner. I told you there was a lot in this one. We're not even done yet. Now, this next part almost feels like it doesn't really fit. Like the same way that we had the chapter in the wrong place before, it almost feels like we are either missing a chapter or this is in the wrong place. Because it goes from the way that it reads right here. First I will tell you, yet no one has the courage to support me against these except Michael, your prince. And then, And I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, stood up to strengthen and protect him. Or, like, that doesn't really seem to fit. It feels like it's a continuation, but not from there. Now, then, I will tell you the truth. 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and then a 4th, who will be far richer than all the others. By the power of his wealth, he will stir up everyone against the kingdom of Greece. And then a mighty king will arise, who will rule with great authority and do as he pleases. But as soon as he is established, his kingdom will be broken up and parceled out to the 4 winds of heaven. It will not go to his descendants, nor will it have the authority with which he ruled, because his kingdom will be uprooted and given to others. This, as far as I can understand, is probably talking about Alexander the Great, right? The Greeks come in, they make it to Babylon, they defeat, and then he dies, as was prophesied by his own prophets. He went there knowing full well that he was supposed to die, according to the accounts, right? He had a friend of his who died before the campaign who told him he would meet him in Babylon when he wasn't even planning on going to Babylon. And he was dying. Like, it wasn't like he was going to get better and go. His friend told him, hey, I'm dying. I'll see you in Babylon. And he went to Babylon and he died. And then his kingdom was broken apart. And there was a king in the south and the north. Let's go ahead and look at that real quick. I looked up the death of Alexander, right? So then I started pulling out what came from Alexander. We had the Ptolemaic kingdom, which was Egypt and those regions there. We had the Greco-Bactrian came about a little bit later. I was like, that's listed in the wiki, but it's not really there. You had the kingdom of Pergamon, which was the Macedonian Turkey area. Say the word, bit. This, by the way, just happens to be where all the churches of Revelation are. Right here in this spot. Funny. Pergamon. And then you had the Seleucids, right? We've talked about the Seleucids before. This is who took over control of Babylon. This kingdom came about because of the death of Alexander. His general took over this area and founded this empire and maintained control of Babylon. There was slight interchanges, right? I rule this, I rule this. And it was border disputes for a while, but this is what took over. And it wasn't until, and he was Persian. Like the founder of this was of Persian descent. That's why it's linked to the Persians in what I do here. And then he was succeeded by 2 more Persian empires. And then along came the Islamic Rashid Caliphate and took over most of the land. But this is who was in control after Alexander. So there is a king in the south. The king in the south would have been the Ptolemaic dynasty, right? And then you had a king in the north. That's the Macedonians there. I am not, by any means, a scholar in history. I am interested in history. I like to know the things, but I have not, in any means, deep dived the history of Greece in a way that I could intelligently argue whether or not these things happened. That's the whole reason I went through this whole thing, because we're going to read through them, and they may have happened with Cleopatra. When it talks about the daughter, that might be Cleopatra. She was in the south with Ptolemy. But I don't know. I'm not well versed enough in it to know, and it really doesn't matter in the long scope of things. The next part that is important is chapter 12, which is where we're going to wrap up. This is important. If it was indeed fulfilled like this before, then we know that the prophecy is true. If it is yet to come, then we know what to look forward to. But I'm not sure where it places. Then a mighty king will arise who will rule with great authority and do as he pleases, probably Alexander. But as soon as he is established, his kingdom will be broken up and parceled out to the 4 winds of heaven. It was broken into 4 kingdoms. It will not go to his descendants, nor will it have the authority with which he ruled. And none of them were really like his descendants. It was his generals who took over the kingdom, because his kingdom will be uprooted and given to others. The king of the south will grow strong, Ptolemy, but one of his commanders will grow even stronger and will rule his own kingdom with great authority. After some years, they will form an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south will go to the king of the north to seal the agreement. But his daughter will not retain her position of power, nor will his strength endure. At that time, she will be given up, along with her royal escort and her father, and the one who supported her. But one from her family line will rise up in his place, come against the army of the king of the north, and enter his fortress, fighting and prevailing. He will take even their gods captive to the captive to Egypt, with their metal images and their precious vessels of silver and gold. For some years he will stay away from the king of the north, who will invade the realm of the king of the south and then return to his own land. But his sons will stir up strife and assemble a great army, which will advance forcefully, sweeping through like a flood, and will again carry the battle as far as his fortress. In a rage, the king of the south will march out to fight the king of the north, who will raise a large army, but it will be delivered into the hands of his enemy. When the king is carried off, the king of the north will be proud in his heart, and will cast down tens of thousands. But he will not triumph, for the king of the north will raise another army, larger than the first, and after some years he will advance with a great army and many supplies. In those times, many will rise up against the king of the south, violent ones. Your own people will exalt themselves in fulfillment of the vision, but they will fail. Then the kings of the north will come and build up a siege ramp and capture a fortified city. The forces of the south will not stand. Even their best troops will not be able to resist. The invader will do as he pleases, and no one will come to stand against him. He will establish himself in the beautiful land, with destruction in his hand. He will resolve to come with the strength of his whole kingdom, and will reach an agreement with the king of the south. He will give him a daughter in marriage in order to overthrow the kingdom, but his plan will not succeed or help him. And then he will turn his face to the coastlands and capture many of them. But a commander will put an end to his reproach and will turn it back upon him. After this, he will turn back towards the fortresses of his own land, but he will stumble and fall and be no more. In his place, one will arise who will send out a tax collector for the glory of the kingdom. But within a few days he will be destroyed, though not in anger or in battle. In his place, a despicable person will arise. Royal honors will not be given to him, but he will come in a time of peace and seize the kingdom by intrigue. Then a flood of forces will be swept away before him and destroyed, along with the prince of the covenant. After an alliance is made with him, he will act deceitfully, for he will rise to power with only a few people. In a time of peace, he will invade the richest provinces and do what his fathers and forefathers never did. He will lavish plunder, loot, and wealth on his followers, and he will plot against the strongholds, but only for a time. And with a large army, he will stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south, who will mobilize a very large and powerful army, but will not withstand the plots devised against him. Those who eat from his provisions will seek to destroy him. His army will be swept away, and many will fall slain. And the two kings, with their hearts bent on evil, will speak lies at the same table, but to no avail, for still the end will come at the appointed time. The king of the north will return to his land with great wealth, but his heart will be set against the holy covenant. So he will do damage and return to his own land. At the appointed time, he will invade the south again, but this time it will not be like the first. Ships of Kittim will come against him, and he will lose heart. Then he will turn back and rage against the holy covenant and do damage. So he will return and show favor to those who forsake the holy covenant. His forces will rise up and desecrate the temple fortress. They will abolish the daily sacrifice and set up the abomination of desolation. With flattery, he will corrupt those who violate the covenant, but the people who know their God will firmly resist him. Those with insight will instruct many, though for a time they will fall by sword or flame, or be captured or plundered. Now, when they fall, they will be granted a little help, but many will join them insincerely. Some of the wise will fall, so that they may be refined, pure, and made spotless until the time of the end, for it will still come at the appointed time. Now, part of this most likely has been fulfilled, and part of this is most likely dealing with in the future, right? I think when we get to the point where it says at the appointed time, we can safely assume that this king from the north who will invade the south is probably going to be Gog and Magog, right? The chief princes of Meshach and Tubal. Like, we should be able to assume that. This seems to be tied to that from this point forward. This seems to be when God puts his hooks in and pulls the people and they make war against the temple and all of that. That all seems to fit right here. So this part seems like it may be something that we can look at going forward. I, again, am really not sure about all of this. It seems to me that the kingdom in the north is going to be Pergamon, right? Not Rome, but Turkey. Turkey and Greece were like very disputed borders. They still are very disputed borders out that way, and so the area of Macedonia is most likely Gog. That is most likely where the war is going to kick off. It will involve the current state of Turkey, almost certainly. Egypt and the Ptolemaic dynasty appears to be the kings of the south. That is probably going to be the same players, right? I don't know for sure. This little part is little, but most likely that's what we're dealing with. Now, this appears to be in the future. We don't have a current temple. There is no temple to desecrate, right? There is no daily sacrifice at the temple because there is no temple. So we are not there yet. They were there when they got back, but I don't believe that this was really talking about them. Oh, Katim, did I look that up? I did not look that up. What is it? What was that? Let's look at that right here. Katim is G, so that is going to be right here. The western coastlands or Mediterranean islands. So what it is saying is going to happen with the ships of Katim, they're going to intercede, right? Now, the ships of the Westlands could be U.S. naval vessels. And that's what I wanted to point out there here. The ships of Katim will come against him and he will lose heart. That could be when the king of the north invades the south. So, the king will do as he pleases and will exalt and magnify himself above every god. And he will speak monstrous things against the God of gods. He will be successful until the time of wrath is completed. For what has been decreed must be accomplished. He will show no regard for the gods of his fathers, nor for the one desired by women, nor for any other god, because he will magnify himself above them all. And in their place he will honor a god of fortresses, a god his fathers did not know, with gold, silver, precious stones, and riches. He will attack the strongest fortresses with the help of a foreign god, and will greatly honor those who acknowledge him, making them rulers over many and distributing the land for a price. At the time of the end, the king of the south will engage him in battle, but the king of the north will storm out against him with chariots and horsemen and many ships, invading many countries and sweeping through them like a flood. He will also invade the beautiful land, and many countries will fall. But these will be delivered from his hand: Edom, Moab, and the leaders of the Ammonites. He will extend his power over many countries, and not even the land of Egypt will escape. He will gain control of the treasuries of gold and silver, and over all the riches of Egypt, and the Libyans and Cushites will also submit to him. But news from the east and north will alarm him, and he will go out with great fury to destroy many and devote them to destruction. He will pitch his royal tents between the sea and the beautiful holy mountain, but he will meet his end with no one to help him. So this is talking about the Antichrist, right? This is talking about the king who exalts himself, the fallen one. There is no Christ, so there is no Antichrist, but like they're really not even looking for that here, right? They're looking for a singular actor to show up, but they're really not looking for what the Christians consider to be coming back. And they're looking for, in opposition to that singular actor, another singular actor who is going to be causing these things to happen. It's not even really a divine battle as much as the powers of the princes and principalities, is, but for the most part, this is talking about people, right? It's not really talking about Antichrist, but it is. This is what gets extrapolated into the Antichrist. A god of fortresses. He will show no regard for the gods of his fathers, nor the one desired by women, nor for any other god, because he will magnify himself above them all. That is what's key here, right? Now, I serve the God of all, not myself in any way, shape, or form, right? I am a very tiny little speck of God, but in no way am I a God or God. Right? If anyone is telling you that they are God or directly of God, be very wary. Use your discernment. Be very wary. But this appears to be things that will happen in the future, not now. We will see them then. And so we're not going to spend much time getting into them, right? We're going to see a lot in Revelation of what to look for, and we'll probably be back here then to look at it too. So, at that time, Michael, the great prince who stands watch over your people, will rise up. There will be a time of distress, the likes of which will not have occurred from the beginning of nations until that time. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered. And many who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, and others to shame and everlasting contempt. Then the wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness will shine like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, shut up these words and seal the book until the end of time, until the time of the end. Many will roam to and fro, and knowledge will increase. And then I, Daniel, looked and saw two others standing there, one on this bank of the river and one on the opposite bank. And one of them said to the man dressed in linen, who was above the waters of the Nile, "How long until the fulfillment of these wonders?" And the man, dressed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, raised his right hand and his left hand towards the heaven, and I heard him swear by him who lives forever, saying, "It will be for a time, and a times, and half a time. And when the power of the holy people has finally been shattered, all these things will be completed." I heard, but I did not understand, so I asked, "My Lord, what will be the outcome of these things?" "Go on your way, Daniel," he replied, "for the words are closed up and sealed until the end of now, until the time of the end. Many will be purified, made spotless and refined, but the wicked will continue to act wickedly. None of the wicked will understand, but the wise will understand. And from the time of the daily sacrifices abolished, and the abomination of desolation set up, there will be 1290 days. Blessed is he who waits and reaches the end of 1335 days. But as for you, go on your way until the end. You will rest and will rise to your inheritance at the end of the days." So we do have a timeline, right? I'm going to probably wind up taking a break and doing some math here because from the time the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination of desolation is set up, there will be 1290 days. And blessed is he who waits and reaches the end of 1335 days. So that is what, like 40-day spread? 45-day spread. So that could be 45 years, right? Everybody takes the 1290 days, they break that down into 3.5 years, and that's cool. Like, but what if it's 1290 years from the time the sacrifice ended until the abomination shows up? Where would that bring us? It doesn't bring us to Jesus, so I'm not trying to imply that, but I am curious to know, like 1290 years would have been well back from us. When was the sacrifice set up? I am going to take a break. I will be back in just a minute. All right, so it appears that the last official sacrifice was around the time of 70 current era, right, after Christ. And so adding 1290 to that brings us to a time period when the Jews were actually expelled from Poland in the 1300s, like 1390, I think is what it wound up being. But it doesn't appear to be anything really significant into what we are looking at here. So it wound up being a rabbit hole. A lot of times it does. There's no reason to take y'all down the rabbit hole with me if there's no fruit at the end of it. But it was something worth looking at. I do that all the time. The words are sealed up to the end, right? Why do we have them? I mean, that implies that we don't have them. It implies that there was indeed something missing up here. Maybe that this is in the wrong spot. I don't know. At that time, Michael, the great prince who stands watch over Israel, your people, will rise up. There will be a time of distress, the likes of which not have occurred from the beginning of nations until that time. You know what I think that is. You know what I think the abomination of desolation is. That's why I was looking up, trying to see if it was something other than what I thought. This implies that it will be someone who sets up the abomination of desolation. But to me, that doesn't have to happen. That's just me. But I am, from other prophecy, looking for something very specific in the sky, right? Something that will be visible to everyone. It will be terrifying to everyone. And there will be no denying that God did that, not man. That's what I'm looking for as causing the desolation upon the earth. The abomination that should not be in the holy place, the sky, is going to destroy the earth. It is going to change things. It will do things which have not occurred from the beginning of nations. Now we have documentation of what happened at the beginning of nations, so we do somewhat have an idea. The many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life. This is because there was no concept still of heaven and earth. There was still really no full grasping of our current heaven and earth, right? You died and your soul went somewheres, but it wasn't necessarily a good or bad place. It was just kind of a who knows stasis type of spot. And the anticipation was here that at the end of times you would be awakened and given new life. But prior to this, that really wasn't a thing in the culture. So take it from here if you want, that this is a representation of going to meet God in the heavens in your physical incarnation. I think that at the end of time, there will be a great reunification with God. Our souls are expressions of God, sent here to learn lessons, and those lessons are multitude. There are so many things to learn that the divine can't experience because he is too much. He can't know sadness in the manner that someone who only knows one love can know sadness when they lose that one love. That is a very brief explanation of why we are here, but we are here for those type of experiences so that God can feel that through us, so that we can grow and choose Him through us. And so I don't see a problem with these things, right? I do see, okay, all of this is going forward. When we see the abomination, then start counting. And it's telling you to count days. This could be days, it could be weeks, it could be months, it could be years. We are told not to hold to days and years. Some of them mean years, some of them mean days. Regardless, when you see the abomination of desolation that they call it in the sky, then it's time to, book it to the woods like He tells you to do, to the place He has prepared. That's what you're told to do. Woe to those who are in the cities in those days. Woe to those who are in the mountains in those days. Woe to those who hide in their caves in those days. I would pay attention to what He says because He's telling us something that we need to know. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up because we have reached the end of Daniel, and hopefully I brought just a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a somewhat difficult topic. I understand that I hold some rather unconventional views, and I guarantee you that if I have touched any nerves going through the Old Testament, I am going to touch so many more going into the New Testament. We will be going into the New Testament next. We will come back and visit the Old Testament as we need to. But we have gone through all of the major prophecies, and none of them were calling for Jesus. And so we're going to go through the books of the New Testament, and we're going to call it out and see what we see. We're going to read it like it's written, but we're going to read it different than this. I'm going to try to chronological as much as I can. So it's going to take me a little while to get set up. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt State. Peace.